Typography has come a long way since the early days of HTML. CSS is responsible for bringing amazing control over font styles, and a lot of that goodness is available on iOS devices. In this chapter, we'll learn how to implement typographic controls over our page elements. So we've got a basic document here with some HTML. It looks very plain. All HTML looks normally very plain like this. So we're going to create some styles to spice it up, and we'll add stuff to the style tag here. And as you can see, I'm using a div class article to define how the entire page text is styled. So first thing I'll do is I'll style that. So I'll add a .article style here. We'll start with a little bit of padding, 20 pixels. You can see apply right here. It just adds a little bit of room around the entire article. And we'll set up a background image. And instead of using an actual image, we're going to use a gradient. So WebKit gradient. We'll use a linear gradient going from the left top to the left bottom. And it'll go from, that's white, to, that will be like a gray. So you can see this gray gradient applies to the background. We'll go ahead and add a border to the whole article. And we'll just make it a solid border with just the colors. You can see a little bit of a gray border around the entire article gets applied right now. And then we'll change the font. The font is an element that has a lot of different attributes. You can see there's font family, font size, and font weight are usually the styles that people use. There's a shortcut for all those. If you just use the font parameter here, you can specify a bunch of things at once. So you could say, I want it to be 16 pixels in size and use a line height of 20 pixels. And you can change the font to be something else. Now with fonts, you're really applying a font that you think is on the user's system. So whichever user's viewing this file, needs to have this font, or they're not going to be able to see the document that you have. Later on, we'll deal with using custom fonts, so we can totally take care of fixing some of those issues that you have right now, or I know that I had with just using really ugly fonts, although Georgia's not that bad. Okay, let's restyle the links because all the links are blue right now. So we'll change the links in the article. We'll do that through the anchor tag, redefining the anchor tag. So we'll change the color of those just to something a little bit nicer, like a medium blue, and we'll make them bold. Change the font weight. So here we're using just the keyword for the weight since that's the only thing we want to mess around with. All right, then we'll go into restyling the heading tags. So article H1, and we'll get rid of the margins. That's really typical. A lot of heading tags have a lot of margins at the beginning and at the end of it. So just by resetting it, we can control them later on if we need to. And we'll apply a different font here. We'll use bold 60 pixels over 43 pixels. We'll change the font to Euro style. And if the user doesn't have Euro style, we'll use Arial. Euro style. So Euro style is a Mac font. Somebody's on a PC, they'll be able to see the font Arial. So you could specify a different font from whatever you choose at the beginning by just typing in a comma right here and putting a different font. And notice that if I add the word bold at the beginning, it also makes the text bold. So the font tag can be simple, just having these three elements here. It can be more complicated by adding additional elements. Let's see what else we can do with this. We'll add some custom padding underneath. So padding. Our padding is another one of those that has tags for each side or a tag for the entire thing. So in this case, we'll do just a padding to the bottom of 10 pixels, just adding a little bit of room right here underneath the heading. Now, I like that font, but it's spread out. The tracking's a little bit too loose, so we will use letter spacing and set it to -1 pixels. So letter spacing will be what you're used to using as tracking. And then we'll change the font color to, again, be that medium blue. So you see you have a lot of typographic control. You can do letter spacing, which is really cool for doing tracking, and change other things about your font, so other font elements. Let's do something with the paragraphs. So the paragraph tags are going to be restyled to have a text indent of 15 pixels. So this is something you might do to bring attention to the beginning of a paragraph. Add a little bit of an indentation at the beginning of each paragraph. You could do that through text indent. And now we're going to change this quote right here. This quote is defined inside a block quote element. So we're going to redefine the way that works. And we'll just change the margins a little bit. Whenever you want to do margins, you can do the margins as a single number, and that'll do the margins all around in the same way. Or you can specify each side in a series of numbers like this. So this will be the top left, top right, and bottom left. Okay, we'll change the color of this to a sort of a gray, and we'll change the background color. All right, so I'm going to set this background color to a lighter gray, and we'll give this thing a little border radius of 10 pixels. That just makes these edges round right here. We'll change the width of this element. So this is a block quote, so I want to kind of pull it to the side. It's a width of 160 pixels. So that makes it a little bit shorter. And I'm going to float this to the right-hand side so it moves over to the right. And I'm going to put some padding inside this of 13 pixels. So now there's a little bit more room inside this element. And I'm going to change the font here to something that looks a little more interesting. You may have noticed, and this is something that you would do in typography, when you're applying this quotation, the quotation moves this text over. So if I want to hang this quotation, I might do something like text indent and set in a negative value. So this quotation's hanging out a little bit. Okay, I may want to adjust the letter spacing and set it to -1 pixel just to bring it a little bit tighter. So we've done quite a few things with this little block quote. It's looking a little more interesting, and these are just the type of things that you would do if you were styling something for typography. We've done a lot of different things here with CSS that we would do on a program like InDesign to control how the fonts and the style of the text looks on this page. We're going to continue to explore this in this chapter and see how CSS can help us make our documents look great.